A poor nurse couldn't afford a dress. Then her patient's father, a single-dad millionaire CEO, asked, "Will you be my first date?" The monitor beeped in uneven pulses, echoing the tension inside the room. Sophie's small body jerked softly under the blanket, her breaths rapid and shallow. Her eyes blinked in confusion, unfocused. She was only 3, but this sterile room and its machines had become too familiar. It was another seizure, another storm brewing. The physician, pulling a vial from the drawer, sharply declared, "We need to administer diazepam now." But Maya stepped forward, her voice calm yet insistent, saying, "Wait, just give me a minute, please." The doctor paused, frowning, while the nurse at the monitor shot Maya a look of surprise. "You have 60 seconds, the doctor muttered, clearly impatient. Maya then walked over to Sophie's bed as if approaching something sacred, and the child flinched. Maya gently scooped Sophie up, holding her against her chest. Sophie was stiff, her muscles taut with tension. Maya swayed slowly, and then she began to sing, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper, and the room seemed to still captivated by the unexpected melody. The beeping of the monitor remained, but it was noticeably steadier now. Sophie's tiny shoulders began to relax, and her hands, once clenched tightly, loosened, finding and gently clutching the fabric of Maya's scrubs. Her cheek pressed intimately against Maya's collarbone as the soft lullaby continued. "You'll never know, dear, how much I love you." By the time the verse ended, Sophie's breaths had quieted, becoming more even and peaceful. Her entire body was calm, and her grip on Maya was gentle but sure. The immediate danger had passed, a testament to the soothing power of a familiar voice and song. Behind the privacy curtain, Adam Reyes stood frozen. He had come to check on his daughter again, but stopped dead in his tracks at the sound of that voice, that particular song. It had been 2 long years since he last heard it. His wife used to sing that exact lullaby every night before bed, even humming it into the baby monitor on the hardest nights when Sophie struggled with her condition. After the funeral, the music had stopped completely, until now. Adam gripped the curtain tightly, then slowly let go his hand, shaking slightly. He didn't move or speak, afraid to break whatever delicate spell had taken hold of the room. Meanwhile, Maya, completely unaware of his presence, held Sophie with the practiced care of someone who had done this 1,000 times. She whispered something into Sophie's hair as the child blinked sleepily, then gently laid her back down and covered her with the blanket. It was the first time Adam truly saw Maya, not just as a nurse or a figure in scrubs passing in and out of his daughter's life, but as someone who had reached into Sophie's silence and profoundly soothed it. She was someone who remembered how to be gentle when the rest of the world seemed to have forgotten. Later, Adam learned her name was Maya Thompson. She was 30 working night shifts while finishing her nursing degree. Quiet, reliable, and reserved, she kept to herself. Some other nurses mentioned she worked 2 additional jobs just to stay afloat, yet no one seemed to know much more about her. Maya never lingered. She simply came in, did her work, and left quietly. She lived alone downtown in a small apartment. Adam discovered these details not because he asked directly, but because people around her simply noticed. Maya was the kind of person who disappeared into the background unless someone urgently needed help. Then suddenly, she was the only one who truly mattered, her presence becoming invaluable. For the last 3 months, Maya had been assigned to Sophie's wing, a change that wasn't deliberate, just a shift in scheduling. But something profound had shifted since then. After Sophie's mother passed away, the little girl had stopped speaking entirely. Her words had simply disappeared. Although she could hear and understand, Sophie never responded, nor did she cry or laugh. The only things that seemed to soothe her were familiarity, routine quiet, and dim lights. Even Adam had to speak to her gently, as if she might shatter into pieces. Yet that night when Maya sang, Sophie had reached out, and for the very first time in 2 years, she held on a silent breakthrough. Adam ran a small chain of bookstores across the state. After losing his wife, he had largely stepped back, handing over the day-to-day operations to others. He buried himself in routine, much like Sophie, finding no room for anything else in his life. Grief, he believed, simply didn't leave any space for hope to exist. And yet in that hospital room he had felt something stir within him. It wasn't love, not quite, but something quieter, something akin to a breath, a fragile hint of hope. He watched Maya turn to speak to the doctor, still completely unaware of the profound impact she had just made on him and Sophie. Adam slowly backed away and stepped into the hallway where the white lights hummed softly overhead. Nurses passed by, their voices hushed, but to Adam everything felt profoundly different now. He had just witnessed a stranger walk into his daughter's storm and calm it with no fanfare, no expectation of reward, just pure kindness. He didn't know her yet, not her history, nor her reasons for the quiet, unassuming way she moved through the world. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty: he wanted to know her. If this quiet beginning stirs something in you too, don't forget to tap the hype button. Some stories deserve to be heard, especially the ones that begin with a whisper. The morning started like any other: a gray sky, the sharp smell of early rain, and a bus that was 10 minutes late. Maya stood at the curb in her scrubs, holding a paper cup of coffee that had already gone lukewarm. Her backpack felt heavier than usual, not because of books, but from sheer fatigue, a constant companion in her life. 2 jobs, full-time coursework, and the immense emotional weight of caring for vulnerable children like Sophie did not exactly leave much room to breathe. Her life was a relentless cycle of demands, each day a test of her endurance and spirit, with little respite for herself. She was crossing the last intersection before the hospital when a car turning too fast on a yellow light clipped the edge of her backpack. The sudden jolt knocked her sideways, and she caught herself with her palms against the rough pavement, scraping her knee badly as coffee splashed across the sidewalk. The driver didn't even stop, and a man in a suit glanced at her from across the street but simply kept walking. Typical, Maya thought with a sigh. She got up slowly, brushed the dirt off her hands, and limped towards the staff entrance of the pediatric wing, accustomed to such everyday struggles. Arriving just 5 minutes before her shift started, no one noticed the slight drag in her right leg as she moved efficiently through the hallway. She didn't tell anyone. What was the point? This was just life, she thought, and you simply kept walking, enduring whatever came your way. The shift was particularly busy. Sophie had a restless morning, refusing breakfast and curling into herself when the physical therapist arrived. Maya spent extra time gently coaxing her out of bed, offering a lavender-scented cloth, and softly narrating each step of their morning routine, a calming presence amidst the child's discomfort. At one point, Sophie's toy elephant rolled under the bed, and Maya crouched down to retrieve it. A quiet hiss escaped her lips as she straightened up, her knees stiff and aching from her earlier fall. Unbeknownst to her, Adam had been watching from the doorway, his arms crossed, his gaze perceptive. He didn't speak or ask any questions. He just stood there for a moment, observing, then turned and walked away. Maya tucked the elephant under Sophie's arm and continued her duties as if nothing had happened. By the end of the shift, her body felt like stone stiff and heavy with exhaustion. She didn't even realize how deep the bruise had formed under her scrubs. She headed to the break room to retrieve her things, opened her locker with a sigh, and then froze. Inside, resting on the folded edge of her spare jacket, was a small, clear bag. It contained a box of pain relief gel, 2 packets of medicated plasters, and a roll of compression wrap, all carefully selected items. Taped to the side of the bag was a piece of paper torn from a notepad with a single sentence written in careful handwriting: "Take care. Someone is watching." There was no name, no initials, just those simple, enigmatic words. Maya stared at the note for a long moment, a quiet warmth stirring in her chest. A mix of confusion, gratitude, and something else she couldn't quite name welled within her. She looked around the empty break room, half expecting someone to jump out and claim it was a joke. No one came. Later, she casually asked a few nurses if anyone had been in her locker. They all shook their heads and a few raised their eyebrows curiously. One even joked about her having a secret admirer. Maya just smiled politely, a private knowing in her eyes, and tucked the enigmatic note into her pocket, pondering its meaning. That night, Maya sat in her apartment, the lights low, Sophie's patient chart open beside her textbooks. Yet her mind wasn't on the dosage tables, but rather on the pain relief gel in her bag. She thought about the careful way the items had been chosen, nothing generic or random, but all appropriate for soft tissue trauma. Someone had clearly noticed her limp. Someone had cared enough not to ask questions respecting her privacy. Someone had wanted her to feel seen and cared for without feeling embarrassed. It was such a small gesture, almost imperceptible to others, but sometimes small things come like a refreshing rain after a long drought. Sometimes she realized it was just right, precisely what was needed. She lay down that night with her hand resting over her leg, not from physical pain anymore, but from the weight of her thoughts and a quiet comfort she hadn't anticipated finding in such a simple act of care. In another room, Adam sat at the edge of a chair beside Sophie's bed, watching his daughter breathe steadily in her sleep. The lullaby from the night before still echoed in his memory, softer than sound, yet louder than any silence. He remembered the way Maya had winced when she knelt down earlier that day. He recalled how she had said nothing, her focus unwavering on Sophie. He hadn't written the note for recognition, nor did he expect her to know it was him. It was just something he felt he could do, and that was all. But he did not sleep easily that night, for kindness, when given without a name, has a strange way of echoing back, leaving its own mark. The call came just after lunch. Maya was washing her hands at the nurse's station when her name echoed from the intercom. "Maya Thompson to the administrative office immediately." The tone was sharp and final, causing a few heads to turn in their direction. She dried her hands slowly, willing herself to stay calm. But by the time she reached the elevator, her palms were damp again, this time from sheer nerves. Inside the administrative office, the air felt oppressively still. Dr. Kelman sat grimly behind his desk with a senior administrator beside him, arms folded, and a file lay open, a report clipped to the top. "Maya," Kelman began, his voice stern. "The blood panel results from Sophie Reyes's case last Tuesday. Where are they?" Maya's stomach dropped instantly. "They were sent to the lab. I triple-checked the forms," she asserted. "They were logged in," the administrator cut in, "but the vials were never received. You were the last in the chain of custody." Her voice caught in her throat. "That was the night Sophie had a seizure. I remember rushing in to help. I put the vials in the transport box." She stammered, her words sounding thin in the tense silence. Kelman closed the folder decisively. "Until this is resolved, we're placing you on temporary suspension." The room seemed to tilt around her. She opened her mouth to protest, but only managed a choked, "Please, I didn't misplace anything." Kelman simply gave a short dismissive nod towards the door, sealing her fate for the moment, leaving her stunned and unjustly accused. That evening, Adam stood at the end of the pediatric hallway, frowning when he saw a different nurse tending to Sophie. When he asked about Maya, the answers were vague. "She's not on shift today. Probably a swap." But a young tech whispered something else. "There's a situation with a lost lab sample. She might be suspended." Adam remembered that night clearly. Sophie had seized badly, and Maya had barely left her side. There was simply no way she would have neglected protocol. Convinced of her innocence, he made 2 urgent calls, one to security and another to someone in records, determined to uncover the truth. The next morning, Maya sat in her apartment, her work badge tucked away, trying to calculate how long she could last without a paycheck. Her phone buzzed, displaying a message from Dr. Kelman's assistant. "Please report to office. Matter resolved." She returned to the hospital, shoulders still tense with apprehension. "We reviewed the footage," the administrator stated. "It shows you handing off the box to a lab tech at 6:42 p.m. "I told you," Maya whispered, relief washing over her. "The tech failed to log it properly. You're reinstated." She nodded slowly, taking it all in. Then a crucial question formed: who reviewed the footage? The administrator hesitated for a moment before replying, "Mr. Reyes. He personally requested access and found the timestamp." Maya's breath caught in her throat, a profound realization dawning on her about his quiet intervention. Back in the pediatric wing that afternoon, Maya stepped into Sophie's room. The little girl instantly lit up, arms outstretched, no longer shy or afraid of her. Maya knelt beside her, hugging her gently, a reunion of kindred spirits. Adam stood by the window, looking visibly tired, but his eyes met Maya's, and something unspoken passed between them, a silent acknowledgement. She rose and walked over to him. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "I know," he replied, his voice equally gentle. "But you did. You were doing your job, taking care of my daughter. Someone had to speak up for you." "Why help me?" she asked, genuinely curious. Adam glanced away, then back, meeting her gaze. "Because someone needed to," he simply stated. Maya didn't answer, but back at the nurse's station, she pulled a folded note from her pocket and quietly scribbled on the back of a supply slip. "Maybe not everyone sees me as a shadow." She tucked it into her locker where no one would see, a private testament to a newfound feeling. She knew she would never tell Adam how much his quiet action had meant to her, but something profound inside her had shifted. Not every defense needed to be loud to truly matter. Sometimes the quietest ones said the most, leaving the deepest and most lasting impact. The hospital was buzzing with a quiet excitement as posters for the annual pediatric gala appeared in every hallway, adorned with stars, teddy bears, and pastel fonts. It was a significant event held each year to raise funds for critical children's cases. Doctors prepped speeches, administrators organized silent auctions, and nurses whispered about dresses and potential dates in the break room. Maya, however, tried to keep her head down. When the invitation came through internal email, she barely glanced at it before hitting delete. It wasn't that she didn't care about the cause, she did. But the thought of standing in a grand ballroom surrounded by polished shoes, shimmering gowns, and confident laughter made her stomach twist uncomfortably. She felt she simply didn't belong in that world, not amidst chandeliers, champagne, and polite applause. Her true place, she believed, was beside hospital beds and quiet rooms with beeping monitors where her hands could do something truly useful. She had no dress, no money to buy one, and no time between her demanding shifts and night classes. Yet beyond these practicalities there was something deeper. She told herself it was fine. The evening before the gala, she stayed late to organize Sophie's medications. The little girl had fallen asleep early, clutching a stuffed lamb someone had donated last week. The hallway outside the pediatric wing was empty as Maya walked toward the staff room to grab her coat. That was when she saw him. Adam stood by the door holding a long rectangular box wrapped in simple brown paper and tied with a navy ribbon. He looked awkward, as if he had rehearsed something but was already regretting it. Maya stopped a few feet away. "I didn't expect you," she said, surprised. He hesitated. "I know this is last minute and probably presumptuous," he began. She raised an eyebrow gently. "I heard you're not going to the gala," he continued, "and that's perfectly okay. I just thought if you changed your mind." He held out the box, making her heart beat a little faster. "I hope you don't take this the wrong way," he said, lowering his voice, "but I saw this and thought it might suit you. It's simple, and I know I'm not someone who does this often." There was a pause. Then he added quietly, "Will you be my first date in a long time?" Maya blinked, caught completely off guard. He was serious, not charming or coy, just sincere, even nervous. She took the box, her fingers brushing his just for a moment, and the warmth startled her more than she expected. He didn't wait for an answer. "No pressure," he said softly. "Just think about it." And then he turned and left, leaving her alone with the unexpected gift. Back in her room, she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the box for a long time before untying the ribbon. Inside was a deep sapphire dress folded neatly in white tissue paper. It was elegant but understated, the kind of dress someone might wear to a quiet, meaningful celebration, not a flashy event. There were no sequins, no dramatic cut, just a soft drape, a gentle neckline, and a kind of quiet strength in its stitching. She held it up against her. It looked perfect, suspiciously perfect. She stepped into it carefully, pulling it over her shoulders and standing in front of the mirror. It fit like it had been made for her. That was when she noticed a note tucked into the corner of the box, a small card handwritten in a firm, slanted style. It read, "She never got the chance to wear it. I thought maybe now is the right time for it to live." Maya's breath caught, a sudden chilling realization. She folded the card slowly, pressing her fingers into the crease. Of course, the dress was not just a dress. It had a story, a memory, a weight. It had belonged to Adam's wife. Suddenly, the perfect fit no longer felt like a compliment. It felt like she was wearing a ghost, a remnant of a past she wasn't a part of. Maya sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, still wearing the dress. Her reflection stared back at her from the mirror, elegant, composed, and entirely unsure of who she was anymore. The dress was undeniably beautiful, but she couldn't help feeling like she was borrowing someone else's place, stepping into a life that wasn't hers. The grand ballroom shimmered under crystal chandeliers, casting a golden light over tables dressed in white linen and polished silverware. The hospital's annual gala was in full swing. Glasses clinked, conversations hummed, and soft music floated through the room like warm perfume, creating an atmosphere of refined festivity. Maya stood near the entrance, frozen for a moment. The second she stepped in, something shifted, not a real hush, but a perceptible change in the air, as if her presence had subtly tilted the room's focus. She could feel eyes on her, some curious, some surprised, some warm, and some decidedly not. In her deep sapphire gown, her golden hair swept into a soft bun. She was almost unrecognizable even to herself. She wasn't the exhausted pediatric nurse in sensible shoes and worn scrubs. Tonight she felt like a borrowed version of someone else, someone who might actually belong in this glittering setting. A few guests offered polite compliments like, "You look lovely," and "I didn't even recognize you." She smiled, nodded, and kept walking. Then, as she neared the refreshment table, she heard it. "Isn't that the dress, the one from his wife? I saw her holding it once. It was for their anniversary gala. She died that fall." A painful pause followed. "I didn't realize he kept it. And now it's on her. Did he seriously give that to a nurse? That's bold. She looks great. But still, who does that? Dressing the new girl in the last one's memory. God, that gives me chills. No offense, but isn't it a little sad? She's sweet, but maybe just a stand-in. They didn't know she was near, or perhaps they simply didn't care." The room didn't dim, but Maya felt like it had her chest tightening with a profound sense of humiliation. She turned away, gripping the back of a nearby chair to steady herself, her fingers digging into the fabric. She hadn't wanted to come telling herself she wasn't ready, that she didn't belong. Now, strangers had voiced the exact fear she had tried so hard to silence within herself. She wasn't the woman Adam had once loved, and she never would be. The dress didn't just fit her body. It fit someone else's memory. And suddenly she couldn't tell if that had been Adam's intention all along, making her question everything. She slipped away before dessert, offering no goodbyes, just the echo of her heels on the hallway tile. The quiet outside felt infinitely better than the storm raging inside her chest. Back home, she didn't even change out of the dress immediately. She stood in front of the mirror in her small apartment coat on the floor, the dress still clinging to her like a question she didn't want to ask. The woman looking back at her was elegant and entirely unfamiliar, a stranger cloaked in borrowed beauty. She stared at her reflection, then whispered, "You weren't chosen because you're you. You were chosen because you fit a space someone else left behind." Her throat tightened with a surge of anger, not at herself for momentarily believing she belonged in that ballroom or could be someone's first date again. Then came the crushing guilt, the thought that she had unknowingly stepped into a sacred memory without realizing it, and perhaps that meant she didn't belong there at all. She unzipped the dress carefully, folded it gently, and slid the box beneath her bed, wanting to hide it away. The next morning, she called the hospital and requested a shift reassignment, offering no explanation. She replied to Adam's text with a simple, "Thank you for last night," nothing more, and left the rest of his messages unread. For days, she moved quietly through the pediatric wing, diligently avoiding his path. Clinging to routine charts, meds, numbers, data felt easier than feelings. But she missed Sophie's laugh, Adam's soft voice, and the lightness in her chest when she was around them, a lightness that suggested maybe, just maybe, she could start again. Still, every time she considered going back, she heard those voices whispering, "You're just a replacement. You fit the memory. You're not her." So she stayed away, convinced that if she let herself feel everything, the fall would hurt even more deeply. And deep beneath it all, a wound she had never dared to name. The guilt from her sister's death still whispered to her that love was dangerous because loving people meant you might lose them. Maya Thompson wasn't sure she could survive losing again. The hospital hallways were quieter than usual, the kind of quiet that settled only at the end of a long, cold year. Outside the windows, the world was preparing for fireworks and midnight kisses. Inside, Maya was just finishing her shift, tugging her coat from the back of the break room chair and rubbing her tired eyes, ready to go home. She was halfway to the exit when a nurse from pediatrics came rushing down the hall shouting, "Maya, room 4117, Sophie's having a seizure, a bad one." The words hit Maya like a physical slap. She dropped her coat instantly and ran, her heart pounding with dread and urgency. By the time she reached the room, chaos had already taken hold. The night doctor was prepping a sedative, monitors blaring erratically, their urgent beeps filling the air. Sophie's small body arched, trembling uncontrollably, her face pale and slick with sweat, a terrifying sight for anyone present. Adam stood frozen in the corner, his hands clenched tightly and shaking uncontrollably. His eyes, wide with panic, found Maya's the second she entered the room, a silent plea for help. No one told her what to do. She instinctively knew what was needed in that critical moment. She crossed the room, climbed onto the bed, and pulled Sophie into her arms, careful of the IV lines. The child's body was stiff and jerking violently, but Maya held her close, shielding her, a protective embrace amidst the storm. She whispered something, then began to sing louder. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." She sang the same lullaby, repeated again and again, her voice cracking slightly, but remaining steady and strong. "You make me happy when skies are gray." Slowly, almost miraculously, the tremors began to slow down. Sophie's breathing evened out, though still hitching through soft sobs. Her tiny fingers gripped Maya's scrub top, and her forehead pressed intimately against Maya's collarbone. The blaring alarms dulled, becoming less insistent, less frightening. The doctor stepped in and administered the sedative. The immediate crisis passed, but nothing could break the profound stillness of that moment. Maya rocking gently, singing through her own tears, and the little girl who had once never spoken, now whimpering softly, safely in her arms, a testament to enduring connection. Adam collapsed to the floor, sliding down the wall legs, splayed, his hands covering his face in anguish. The room emptied slowly as staff retreated, but his personal storm had just begun, a torrent of fear and overwhelming relief crashing over him in waves. When everything calmed, Maya gently lowered herself beside him, still holding Sophie securely. "I thought I lost her," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. "You didn't," Maya replied softly, her voice full of reassurance. Her presence beside him was quiet and grounding, a steady anchor. "I've never been that afraid in my life." His voice broke. "Not even when they told me my wife wouldn't make it." She didn't speak, simply allowed her quiet presence to be his strength. "And I've never," he hesitated, "I've never seen anyone walk into something that terrifying and make it look like love." He looked at her, his eyes glassy with unshed tears, but now filled with a new certainty. "I'm not good at this, starting over, knowing what's right. But what you did for her, for me, I can't ignore that anymore." Maya blinked, stunned by his raw honesty. "I gave you that dress," he said gently, "not because I wanted to relive anything, but because you deserved something beautiful, and I needed a way to ask you to stay, to truly stay in our lives." Her throat tightened with emotion at his confession. He reached out, taking her free hand in his. "You didn't wear that dress to replace anyone, Maya. You wore it because you're the first person who sees us, both of us, and stays." Her tears weren't about shame anymore. They were about the profound relief of being seen fully, completely for who she was. When nurses came to transfer Sophie back to her bed, Maya and Adam stayed behind in the quiet waiting room, the soft hum of the vending machine, the only sound. Maya turned towards him. "I've never told anyone this." She began, a vulnerability in her voice. He nodded, still holding her hand, gently inviting her to continue. 5 years ago, I was watching my nephew. He fell just a short fall but hit his head. I panicked and called my sister. She rushed to come home and was in a car accident. She didn't survive. His expression didn't change, but his grip on her hand tightened empathetically. I've carried it ever since, Maya said, tears welling. I wasn't careful. I killed her. No, Adam said, firmly cutting off her self-blame. She swallowed hard, her voice shaky. I don't let people close. I think if I do, I'll lose them, or worse, hurt them. He sat with that heavy truth for a moment, then quietly offered, We don't get to choose how our past ends. She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. But we do get to choose how the next part begins. She tried to speak, but no words came, just a shaky breath escaping her lips. He leaned closer, resting his forehead gently against hers. I want my next part to begin with you. And as fireworks cracked far beyond the hospital walls, signaling a new year, Maya didn't run, nor did she doubt. She simply let herself be held, embracing the possibility of a shared future. The comforting smell of old paper and fresh paint now filled the back corner of Reyes and Compassy's bookstore. It had once been a forgotten space used for storage, stacked with unopened boxes and worn-out displays. But now sunlight streamed onto freshly laid rugs, illuminating a low shelf filled with books wrapped in soft covers. Stuffed animals perched invitingly beside plush reading pillows. In the center, a sign carved by hand in warm wooden letters proudly read, The Sunshine Room. It was Maya's idea, but it was Adam's heart, his longing for healing, that truly brought this special space to life for children. After New Year's, following that long, transformative night in the hospital, something profound had shifted in both of them. There were no grand declarations or promises too big to hold, just a quiet, deep understanding. Adam stopped pretending he didn't watch her walk into the pediatric wing each morning. Maya, in turn, stopped pretending she didn't wait for Sophie's cheerful giggle echoing down the hallway. So when Adam asked weeks later if she might help him build a space for children recovering from long hospital stays, a space of calm color and story, she said yes without hesitation. I wanted it to feel safe, he had explained, like a place where someone could find a little bit of magic even if they're still scared. Maya smiled, and the first word that came to mind, a beacon of hope, was sunshine, a perfect name for their shared vision. They worked side by side, a harmonious team. Maya carefully picked books about kindness and quiet courage, stories that didn't shy away from fear but always ended in light. Adam arranged shelves low enough for tiny hands to reach easily, ensuring accessibility for all children. When they disagreed, they laughed, finding joy in their collaboration. When they agreed, they built steadily, bringing their vision to life. The room finally opened on a quiet Thursday afternoon without a ribbon cutting or a press release, just a simple, profound debut. Maya stood in the doorway watching Sophie toddle into the center of the room with wide, curious eyes. The little girl ran her hand across a soft armchair and pointed to a book with a bright yellow cover. Maya knelt beside her. Do you want me to read this one? She asked softly. Sophie nodded, her gaze fixed on the book, and then without warning, without any coaxing, she spoke. Sunshine, she whispered, her voice a soft, clear sound. Adam, who had been frozen in the doorway, looked at Maya, his eyes widening as he saw her tears. Sophie said it again, this time even more clearly, pointing up at the carved sign. Sunshine. It was her first word in months, a breakthrough that brought a wave of emotion to everyone present. Adam slowly walked in and sat behind them, close enough to touch, but he didn't. He just watched, savoring the moment. Maya opened the book and began to read, her voice steady and soft. It was a story about a girl who planted a garden in the middle of a storm, a powerful metaphor for how something beautiful could still grow even when the world didn't feel safe. Sophie leaned her head against Maya's shoulder, utterly content. Adam closed his eyes for a moment and breathed in deeply, absorbing the peace of the scene. This was not a grand finale, nor was it a fairy tale ending where everything was magically fixed. The hospital still called, Sophie still had checkups, and Maya still worked night shifts. Life was not magically fixed overnight. But there, in that small corner of a quiet bookstore surrounded by stories and tender care, something profound had begun to heal. Two hearts intertwined, found solace in one room, and the softest word in the world, sunshine, spoken by a girl who had once forgotten how, echoed gently into the shelves, filling the space with unspoken promise and hope. The table was small, tucked by the window of a quiet bistro that smelled faintly of rosemary and fresh bread. The lights were low, the music soft and almost forgettable, just enough to fill the silences without interrupting them. Maya sat across from Adam, her hands resting around a warm ceramic cup, finding comfort in the simple setting. She wore no makeup, no heels, just a pale blue sweater and the same quiet smile that had once stopped a child's tears with nothing but a song. Adam wore a collared shirt, slightly wrinkled with sleeves rolled up to the elbows. He looked at ease, but Maya noticed the way his foot tapped softly under the table, revealing he was still nervous, a little unsure. She liked that he was capable of being unsure. The waiter brought their food, simple, comforting pasta, and then left them in peace. "So," Adam said after a few bites, breaking the comfortable silence. "This isn't a gala. No ballroom," Maya replied, a small grin tugging at her lips. "No borrowed dresses." He shook his head. "And no ghost tonight." She looked down for a second, her expression unreadable, then met his eyes. "Good," she said softly, a deep sincerity in her voice. "I'm tired of living in borrowed shadows." Adam reached across the table, his palm open and inviting. She placed her hand in his, without hesitation, a natural connection forming. They stayed like that, fingers laced gently, neither rushing the precious moment. "It took me too long to ask you out," he admitted. "I kept thinking I had to wait for the right time or the right reason." Maya tilted her head slightly, a question in her gaze. "And now?" she prompted softly. "Now." He took a deep breath and smiled. Not the polite kind, but the kind that reached his eyes, crinkling the edges with genuine joy. "Now I know I don't need a reason." He let the words settle between them, then added more quietly, his voice filled with newfound clarity. "This time it's not about healing anyone. It's not about Sophie or guilt or second chances. This time it's just about sitting across from someone who makes me want to live one more day." Maya blinked, her throat tightening unexpectedly at his profound declaration. She didn't look away, meeting his earnest gaze. "You make me feel like I can stay," she whispered, a confession of her own. He stood slowly, walked around the table, and extended a hand this time, not as a gesture of comfort or protection, but something lighter, a beginning. Maya stood too, looking up at him, her eyes warm, her heart open and ready. Their kiss was unhurried, gentle, filled with unspoken understanding. There were no grand promises, no elaborate plans, just two people who had walked through silence, sorrow, and storms, and had finally found each other on the other side. Outside, the night was still, and the world kept turning indifferent to their moment. But in that small bistro, under soft lights, a first date became something infinitely more profound. And this time, neither of them was alone, their journey together just truly beginning. Thank you for joining us on the journey of A Room with Two Hearts. A story not just about love, but about healing, forgiveness, and two souls learning how to begin again. If Maya, Adam, and little Sophie touched something in your heart today, we would be honored if you helped us share this feeling with more people. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss the next soul-stirring story. And if this one moved, you hit that hype button to let us know. We are soul-stirring stories where the quietest moments can carry the loudest meaning. See you in the next story.